Henry and Wendy are walking home from school. They see Mr. Taylor standing in front of his house, scratching his head and looking up at his roof. Wendy, hi Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, oh hi guys. How's school? Henry, good thanks. Is everything okay? You look a little worried. Mr. Taylor, well, a very strange thing happened today. I was getting something from the attic when I came across pieces of colored aluminum foil, some coins, some earrings, and an old watch of mine lying all over the attic floor. Wendy, oh, do you think there was a thief in the attic? Mr. Taylor, no. It seems like someone is collecting these things, but it's a real disorganized mess. Wendy, that is strange. Henry, well, have a good evening, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, yes, you too. Lost in his thoughts. Henry turns to Wendy. Henry, look at these footprints here in the mud, Wendy. Henry and Wendy go to the candy store across the street. Mrs. Gardner is outside and also looks a little upset. Wendy, hello, Mrs. Gardner. What's the matter? Mrs. Gardner, oh, hello, dear. Nothing really, it's just that all my chocolate samples are gone. Wendy, the ones you leave outside the candy store for customers? Mrs. Gardner, yes, that's right. I know it's not stealing exactly, but it's not right. You should only take one. And look, there are scratches on my table too. Henry, scratches. Did you see anyone in the store? Mrs. Gardner, no, but before I went into the back of the store, the bowl was full, and when one came out, it was empty. Wendy, how about in the street? Mrs. Gardner, yes, one of the Taylor triplets, but I don't know which one. He was wearing a sweatshirt with a hood and sunglasses. They look so alike. Henry, don't worry, Mrs. Gardner. I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Henry and Wendy start walking away from the candy store. Henry, look at this. A chocolate. Exactly like the ones in the candy store. Wendy, it's a clue. And look, another two over there. Henry, I bet the thief dropped these while he was running away from the scene of the crime. But if the thief dropped them, why don't they have their wrappers on? Wendy, I don't know, but look where they lead to. Henry and Wendy were standing inside the Taylors' cozy living room, the scent of vanilla from a nearby candle catching their attention. Henry wasted no time. Hi, Tom. Did you hear what happened at the candy store today? Mrs. Gardner is really upset, he exclaimed, looking directly at Tom. Tom looked puzzled, scratching his head. No, I was playing the drums all day. Besides, I've hardly stepped out. Tim, Tristan, do you know anything about the chocolate taken from the candy store? Tom called out to his brothers. Tristan shook his head. No, I've been here all day. I was washing Dad's car, he replied, his voice steady and honest. Wendy turned to Tim. How about you, Tim? She queried. Tim's face lit up with excitement. No, I was weeding the garden. Look, we got $5 each. He flashed a $5 bill, his muddy fingers giving away his afternoon task. Henry and Wendy exchanged a quick glance. Henry mused aloud. Yeah, I can see you've been busy. When I arrived, I noticed that the driveway was wet, and it hasn't rained this afternoon. I also saw that the garden is really neat, and you have mud on the bottom of your pants, Tim. But I didn't say anything about missing chocolate. So, Tom, how did you know that there was chocolate missing from the candy store? The room fell silent, and a red flush crept up Tom's cheeks. Oh no, I only took 3 chocolates. I promise. I felt really hungry after all the drumming I did. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Gardner's not going to call the police, is she? He stammered, guilt etched in his voice. Henry reassured him. No, don't worry, but I think you owe her an apology. As Henry and Wendy turned to leave, the triplets followed them to the door. Wendy pondered aloud. But if Tristan and Tim have alibis, and Tom only ate 3 chocolates, who took the other chocolates? Henry didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on something unusual. Did you see that in the tree? He asked Wendy, an air of mystery surrounding his voice. Wendy tilted her head, scrutinizing the tree. What? She questioned, curiosity piquing her tone. Henry's face broke into a knowing smile. Wow, I think I know who did it. His voice rose with excitement. He turned toward the twins and hollered. You should tell your dad to check his roof. There might be a hole in it. Wendy and the triplets gazed towards where Henry was pointing, leaving a sense of palpable anticipation hanging in the air. The mystery, thought they, was not just about chocolates anymore. Henry and Wendy stood inside Mrs. Gardner's quaint candy store, the sweet aroma of sugar swirling around them. Wendy stepped forward, eyes wide with expectation as she asked, "Come on, Henry. Tell us who did it. Who's guilty?" Mrs. Gardner nodded, her hands pressed nervously together. "It was Tom, right?" she inquired, her voice a mix of anticipation and concern. Henry paused, glancing at both of them. "Well, he took some of the chocolates, but—" he began, quirking a brow. Mrs. Gardner's eyes widened. "I knew it," she exclaimed, already picturing the whole scene. Henry quickly continued, "But only 3. It was the masked bandit." Mrs. Gardner furrowed her brows in confusion. "The masked bandit?" she questioned. Unable to contain himself, Henry burst into laughter. "The masked bandit, also known as a raccoon," he revealed with a mischievous grin. "Really?" Mrs. Gardner asked, incredulous yet relieved. Henry nodded. "Yes. Raccoons love anything shiny. Aluminum foil, like the chocolate wrappers, jewelry, you name it. They take all kinds of things and store them in their dens." Wendy's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Really? And how did you know it was a raccoon?" "When I saw the raccoon in the Taylor's tree, I remembered what Mr. Taylor told us this morning about the shiny objects scattered all over his attic floor," Henry explained. "And I also saw raccoon prints in the mud." Wendy nodded eagerly, recalling what she knew. "Yeah, that's right. Raccoons often live in people's attics." Henry continued. "And then, Mrs. Gardner told us about the missing chocolates from the candy store. Look at the chocolate wrappers. They are made of shiny foil. And the scratches on the table were obviously made by raccoons." "Oh yeah. And the chocolates without their wrappers led to the Taylor's house." Wendy chimed in, piecing it together. "See, put all the clues together. And it was obviously a raccoon," Henry concluded triumphantly. Mrs. Gardner sighed with relief, a smile spreading across her face. "I'm so glad it was a raccoon and not Tom. Thank you, Henry. Please take these chocolates as a special thank you." With gratitude shining in their eyes, Henry and Wendy accepted the big boxes of chocolates. Mrs. Gardner generously handed them. "Wow. Thanks," they exclaimed, reveling in their sweet reward. The candy store caper was solved, leaving only the sweet linger of a funny adventure to fill their day.